All right, guys, how's it going? Welcome. We're just gonna kick things off here in just a second. Getting some things in order. So, real quick, I've actually just wanted to point this out. This is something that I've just threw together for fun yesterday. Another version of the rocky cliffs, rocky deserty substance type environment. Um, and I wanted to go ahead and retexture this sometime today or tomorrow for you guys to have as an environment to play around with if you have World Creator 3 or whenever you get World Creator 3. So we'll we can go through this whenever you guys get that connection available. A couple updates. This is a new version of the program. A couple more performance bugs and things were kind of fixed, so nothing too major. And the beta and alpha access. So a lot of people, I'm sure, are wanting access to the beta whenever that launches. And if you follow the Discord notes, I don't know the exact dates, but the beta itself has been postponed, I believe, another month or so. I'm not entirely sure of the exact date, but if you are a pro, if you have a pro license, a pro maintenance subscription, you're going to get access to the whatever state World Creator 3 is at on just before Christmas Eve. So I don't know if they've announced that publicly, but anyone who has a pro maintenance license will get it much sooner, just before Christmas. So today we're basically going to start from scratch, create an island. There's been some requests for creating some sort of island, and we can go from there. So again, I'll make sure this is available to whomever has the version of the software right now. And whenever you get it, then you can have it available as well. So the first people that are going to have access to this is whoever has is supporting on Patreon right now, and I'll make it available to everyone else later. This isn't textured yet, but I will retexture this for a couple different types of environments. So maybe a deserty version, or maybe it's a grassy version. I could showcase two different versions of what this would look like so that you have something that you can play around with. Okay, so let's go ahead and start a brand new project. The base values here, and change our precision from 1 meter to 1/4 of a meter. I don't think 1/8 of a meter is still available just yet. So, starting off, how are you guys doing today? Everyone's doing pretty good. We can get started. There's been a couple text updates I've noticed here. The font's a little bit different, which is nice. So we're just going to change the operation to add here. We're going to create 2 biomes, both with a custom base shape. We're going to flatten each one, and we're going to create the island from scratch. So this subdivision will make it something about this value, and this subdivision will increase it to something really high. So my thoughts on the island was sort of have an island that was perhaps in the Caribbean, where there's been some volcanic activity and the volcano exploded at some point in time, and there was a caldera and it oozed out onto one direction. So one direction of the caldera exploding would be have all this type of erosion and be more flat. Can you use a grayscale height map as a base shape in version 3? Not yet, but you will be able to. I'm so looking forward to the day we can do that. So I presume the height map stuff as a base shape will start It'll be under the custom base shape properties, I imagine. So somewhere in this graph here, you'll be able to see the where you can import a custom base shape or import any type of alpha mask, height map, whatever type of map you want to use as a height map as a base shape. So I would imagine it's going to be in this sort of graph right here. All right, got my coffee ready to go. Yeah, that's I think being able to use height maps is going to be a really powerful tool for everyone, and everyone's going to want it for sure. Being able to create be able to take something from our own planet and recreate that is um, definitely a high valued piece of function. I can guarantee you that. All right, so let's go through some type of creation here. Widen this out. So I'm going to try and create sort of an egg shape of an island real quick. So some sort of egg shape. And we can see, can increase it, but I'm going to widen it out just a little bit. And then, so this will be our base sort of shape, but I'm going to come out here in this edge, in this edge, and over here. Why not? Over here a little bit. And I'm just going to lower these, widen them out and lower them just ever so slightly. There we go. It would be amazing if they had LiDAR perhaps built in at some point as well. Yes, in the last stream, we got confirmation that as well in this custom base shape graph, DIM data or digital elevation modeling data is going to be built in. So it'll be able to access all the satellite imagery that you could probably think of. I would think Pulsar will be in there. Aster is going to be in there. USGS, I hope, is going to be in there. So yeah, LiDAR and digital elevation modeling data will be built in right here so that you can just, go around it like Google Earth and pick a spot that you want to capture. And hopefully, my big hope is that in addition to capturing the height map of that little zone that you capture, it also captures the color. So it takes whatever satellite image has for, colorizing that location. And you can use, like in Photoshop, you can say, oh, I want to make a selection that's all the green in the image, or I want to make a selection that's all the brown or blue in the image, so that you can create these custom mask works. Because I do that now, even in World Creator 2. You take a satellite image and a height map from, Terrain Party or Google Earth, and you bring that into Photoshop. You do a color range where you can make your own custom masks, bring those custom masks into World Creator 2, and use that mask as a base to retexture the real world values. Have you seen the Geo plugin for Blender? It pulls in height and color directly into Blender from a Google browser. Yes, I do know that Blender has that amazing functionality. So I know that they are banking on something very similar to be able to do here. Make this more of a shelf. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna make sure the caldera is somewhere right here, and we'll assume that it flowed down this direction. So somewhere right there, I'm just gonna click once and raise up, but smooth it out as we go. What I'm doing is I'm using the same mask a few different times. To increase where I want it to be. And then I'm going to come through and reselect this in almost a swooping fashion. So, oh, shoot. Let's reset this back to normal because I have a different idea I want to do. Let's flatten that. And let's flatten that. All right. Back to normal. I have a different thought approach real quick. So let's go back and make our egg shape-ish because I thought the island was a little bit too close to the edge on one side. And we'll do it right here where it's a much sharper edge. All right, so now let's create another layer here. And this is going to be more of the island itself. So this lower shelf is going to be the island shelf below the water, or presumably below the water. And this shape here is going to be hopefully our beach edge. So we can create another bump out here. Okay, so right there will be our caldera location. So we can widen this up even more. So I'm just scrolling right now to change the feathering effect. All right, so let's go back to where we were. Let's do our swooping action here. Okay, add a little bit more there, add a little bit more there. All right, so this is quite rough right now, so we're going to increase this. Hopefully we can make it more of a circle at first. Add. All right, so now what I like to do here is make this side more of a peak up and lower this side down. So we can do that by tilting it. So let's make this whole selection of our, whoops, forgot to hold control to reselect everything. So holding control, I can add to the selection. If I don't hold control and I start clicking, it's going to remove the selection. Okay. So now, based on our edit mode, we can go to tilt. And I'm going to hover the cursor somewhere right here so we can control the tilt point. If it's down too low, then I might tilt below too far, so to speak. So, all right, so like, see, we can tilt in any direction. What I want to do is I want to tilt it up just slightly this direction. I'm going to raise that up just a little bit right here. Let's pop this up just a little bit. Set our operation back to add, and we'll raise this slightly. All right, so we have our rough general shape, sort of. Let me take this block here. Actually, let's make it wider. I want the caldera to be relatively flat, and we'll make a mound in the middle so that when a volcano collapses, it collapses really low, and then there's a mound, usually in the center, like in Crater Lake or at oh shoot, forgot the mountain. I made a blank. I'm drawing a blank. So we're going to use a line to sort of flatten this area out. There we go. And then what we can do is we could also change the scale. So if this whole mountain peak here is too big, which I'm not saying it's too big right now, but I just want to show you the feature. So if you feel this whole thing is a tad bit too big, then you can change by selecting the edit mode of scale. Now this is going to essentially copy it. Hopefully there's going to be a checkbox here where you can decide if you want to copy it or not copy it. But this is going to increase it or decrease it in size. So if we make a small little piece like that, you see how it's made our own little caldera inside. So we're going to select that and make it even smaller. Align this to here. Then we are getting somewhat of a mound here, but we need to add this back. Then we can add a little bit of this back. Then what I'd like to do is take a lot of this, go back to align, and just smooth it out ever so slightly. We got ourselves a big volcano that kind of blew up. I don't know if that's the size that I had in my mind, but we're going to roll with it. Let's see. I think I want this to come up. Oh, wrong edit mode. And let's take this down. All right, so now we have sort of the generalized shape. We can go to the second biome that we've made, and we've made an even tighter, subdivision pattern so that we can work on top of the previous detail in the previous biome. So you see I've set the operation for the second biome to be add. That way it adheres to everything from the previous biome. I'm also going to inherit the filters of the previous biome so that whatever filters we use in the large scale detail, we can inherit those for the smaller scale detail. I was hoping by now that we can have custom masking, but right now we just have, we just add another biome here. Right now we don't have custom, masking out yet, but the seeds, let's see, the seed values should work. So I'm able to change the seed value. So before it didn't quite work out so well, but we could also type those in. However, we're just going to stick with the shape that we've been doing on, and we can work with this. So let's shape this up a tad bit more with our lower biome here. I think what I'm going to do is, one thing to keep in mind is when you have subdivisions that are this tight versus subdivisions that are this broad, this fall off mode from linear, smooth, sphere, sharp, whatever, is going to act different because it has less subdivisions to blend, or in this case, it has more subdivisions to blend. So the higher the subdivision, the more smooth out your fall off is going to be, basically. So let's take everything here, and I'm just going to do a little flattening to somewhere right here. So doing this. The aligns are sometimes a little finicky with how much they can react. Actually, let's shape it right here. Lower that down a tad. But right here, let's act like the lava is being poured outward. Right here. So we're going to brown this up. Here we go. That's what I'm looking at. Here, oh, yes, I can. So, perfect. Don't be. Yeah, I don't plan to. I don't plan to. Sometimes that was an accident. Another thing I like to do. Actually, let's change our lighting a little bit. Here we go. That way we can see a little bit better what we're doing. Oh, I know you're messing with me. I know you're messing with me. All right. So at this sort of detail, I'm going to start actually adding these little cut lines. And this will become more apparent, but I want the cut lines to kind of follow the shape of the terrain a little bit that's kind of there. But you can make your own, cut lines or whatever you want. So I'm basically just making sub ridge lines even up through there. And this is going to be a really subtle effect. We're not going to add too much detail to this. See, there's a cut in the terrain right here. I'm going to try and naturally follow it. We can also create our own. This side's not really, not looking up to snuff for us. So you're going to definitely love whenever you're able to get a hold of this. But I really wish you guys could have the opportunity to work on this now, because then we can probably do some of these things together. So we're going to have another stream whenever this all goes live to everyone to kind of work on things together, if you want that kind of stream. Have to have a little humor this morning. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you can get caught accidentally doing some obscene shapes, but guess that depends on where your mind or your humor is in the morning. So last stream I totally forgot to record all this 4K footage. But this time I have all of that footage recording now. All right, so now we're going to just lower this a tad. So you can see I'm just kind of forcing some rough streams to kind of kick off a little bit. So we can do this as well. Come through here. And these are going to be really rough because when we add filters, this sort of stuff will transcend to the next piece. I'm going to try and work on flattening some of this out because it's a little bit wonky. All right, so now let's try and smooth some of this out. Whoops, too much. Add that back just a little bit. Let's go about right there. And then here, we'll bump this up just a little bit. Yeah, I'm widening it out to make it a little bit more smooth. So we can lower that. And all of this we can bring back up. Align it here. Actually, let's go back here. This is sort of the area that I need to fix. It's messing with me. There we go. Got to work on that broad detail to fix. So now we can go back here, change our sizing, and then we can work on some little micro streams. When we add filters, we can actually come back and do this more, and it'll be a bit more apparent of how we want to treat this. Because then we can shape and sculpt around the actual filters themselves. Is there a way to draw smooth strokes instead of those grid-like strokes? Yeah, so that's something that is going to come about, I believe. So yeah, these grid-like, it's just you. So before, this is based off of World Creator 2's little diamond thing where you'd have to select a diamond and move it up and down. This is sort of the same thing. It's just a generalized shaping scheme based off how many subdivisions you have in the actual mesh of the terrain that you can adjust. But whenever they begin to add the custom base shape in terms of painting, mask painting, and all that kind of stuff, you'll be able to basically hide this grid, and this little square will be a sphere or an alpha map or a mask of whatever you want to use. So it's going to come out to where you can paint in your brush strokes in a much more realistic way to how you would imagine doing it in ZBrush or Unreal Engine's landscape editing tools or Blender's sculpting tools. So those type sculpting tools with different types of brush patterns are definitely coming. This is just where it's at right now in this stage, and it's definitely going to be coming. Yeah, so this, like, you can adjust, even though it looks blocky, you can adjust the fall off mode on how it's being blended in from this full dark blue to not blue. You know, if I were to adjust the feathering like this, it's going to smooth that out. And so it kind of acts like a sort of a smooth brush in terms of that, but it's mostly just affecting shoot, lost my train of thought. It's mostly affecting the generalized shape of the mesh. So I accidentally rotated that when I didn't mean to, but we can work with it because it looks better now than it did before. So I want to rotate this a little bit in that direction, but I need to do that with this guy here. So we have our broad detail. If I were to rotate this, you can see I can rotate it any direction I want, but let's turn it a little bit more there. So I just turned it from about right here to be more of a curve because I thought it was sticking out a little too straight. That makes sense. Yeah, there we go. That's looking better. Let me get some drink of liquids. All right, so let's actually just test where, oops. Let's turn off that and let's test where our water line is going to be. A little too high, a little too high. Let's see, where did I want that to be? All right, about there, I think it's pretty good. We'll smooth all that out for sure. And I think now that that's here, this is looking a little bit blocky. So let's turn the water off real quick. Go back to biomes. Let's go back to this biome. Whoops, not the right operation I wanted to do. All right, let's select this guy and go back to tilt. This time we'll set the operation mode to min, and I believe that's going to allow us to, yeah, lower this side some. So let's trying to smooth out this transition a little bit so it's not just like a drop off. There's actually uh there's some substance to this transition. And we'll fill in this smooth area just a little bit more. There we go. We're getting there. Quick question. Does the path filter allow you to rotate in version 3? I want to be able to use it to make banked corners for roads for a map I'm working on. It looks like I could possibly use the tilt filter or tilt feature, but it would be in plain when but to have to do it every curve. So the path filter, the path filter is not in this version yet, but the path filter I know is getting a complete revamp. So it's going to have a whole lot more functionality, and I'm sure being able to move one of them is to be able to move the whole path or move huge, like be able to select say 18 or 20 of the little nodes in your path that you're used to in Rollcator 2 out of 50, and you can move multiple ones around at once. You're able to control the spline a bit better, rotate it if you want. So all that type of functionality will be available to the path filter whenever it comes in. I don't know necessarily if it's going to be classified as a filter. As it is, it may just be like as a custom base shape thing. So we may have to wait and see what they do about that, because I'm not entirely sure the sort of direction they want to take with that. All right, so now we have that. So let's add a filter here. Not the right one. How about this one? And then let's do, well, we could do mountain, but then adjust its count and the min angle. Then we can add a distribution for the slope of this to be mainly for the steeper slopes. Perfect. Then we can add ridged. But ridged, I also want that to be only for the top part of the mountain. So we will add a height distribution. Select the height, crank this one all the way up. Keep going down till we see, all right, so we don't have masking available yet to where you can see, or the heat maps available, but you can see where the line is. So the line is, where is it at? Line's right here. So if we were to smooth that out, increase or decrease that a little bit. There we go. So now we see this. I don't like exactly how that's looking. Hold on, let me add the grid simulation in there. Lower the evaporation a little bit. Too much, too much, too much. There we go. So all those little lines that I cut, the grid simulation just kind of grabs those a bit more. And even though you don't see exactly where I cut yet, it will be apparent whenever we go back and reshape this. So those little minor cuts that I made, like even here, uh, those little streams that I made, isn't going to be a direct stream. Later you'll be able to make your own custom streams like that. But in this case, it's just adding some sort of volume for the filter to latch onto that's different from the general shape. So the other thing I want to do is not want to do that. Let's go here and add. Where is it? Where are you? Add flatten. And make the flatten also height bound, but this time we're going to change it to only affect the lower portion of the terrain. Let's lower this a little bit. Too much. Trying to play around with exactly where I want that flattened edge to be. So obviously, in this case, I'm going to have to lower the outside just a tad. So let's work on lowering these corners just a bit more. The more filters you add, the more it makes sense to repurpose some things. So it'll make it easier to readjust. All right, so we lowered that a tab. And then this flatten effect, it's pretty sharp. But if we were to blend this out a bit, it smooths that transition out a bit further. There we go. Other thing I want to add to this piece is let's see. I want to be able to smooth out the edge. We can't do that yet because we don't have the smooth or based off of, but we should be able to do that with, where is that at? There it is. Roughness is a pretty rough filter, but take everything down to 0. All right. So if we were to also say we want this height distribution to be height, let's see, where are my numbers here? So about 32 and 60 is the top value of that one. Lower that all the way. And then here we'll try to go down to 32 area. And this one will drop to about 60 something. Maybe we won't have to. Maybe we can make that one a bit smoother. But so the roughness filter is going to let us add some fake sort of sedimentation in certain areas. So let's crank this one back up to 75. There, you see what it did? It added a bunch of this stuff right up here, which I don't quite want. So let's drop the strength down to 10. Like level step 6 up to 50%. See how that treats us. All right, so it's kind of smoothing our edge a little bit more. Should probably lower this to whoops. That was a glitch. There we go. We lowered that just a tad bit more. All right, so let's see. Where is ridged also needs to be a certain height value. That didn't quite take before. Yeah, sorry, we're not going to deal with bots today. Going to lower this smoothness of the height for the ridged. I really wish we could see the shoot. I really wish we could see the heat map, but we can't just yet, which is unfortunate because then that would help us be able to see some of the things that we want to do a bit easier. All right, so we've got that going on. Now let's try and reshape some of these areas a bit. So we can go back to the main biome custom base shape here. And since we have some filters in mind, let's actually, since the roughness simulation is pretty hefty to do, let's just hide it for now. That way we can actually work a bit and not have to worry about performance issues. So let's add a little bit back here. Doing this gracefully so it's not too much. Eventually we'll be able to say if I'm wanting to select this area right here. If I want to smooth this out, I can't do that based on this selection yet, but we're going to be able to. We're going to be able to smooth out this selection and it do everything that we would imagine that we would want it to do. Widen this a bit. Can't do it too much with the line because then it messes some things up, but we can. Erase some bits. Just trying to be ever so slightly graceful with this. And reshape things, shape things more and more and more. All right, so now let's go to this biome here. And let's see, let's try adding a hills filter. Not the type of filter that I was thinking it would work out with us. Balloon filter is nice for those lower levels. Add a height distribution for those. And then set that all the way to 0 or lower value. And let's lower this a tad. I don't want the top of the volcano to balloon out, just the bottom. All right, so now let's feather this back up. Just a tad. There we go. We've feathered our effect a little bit. Does World Creator 3 have the height info where your cursor is like in World Creator 2? Oh, you mean the observer tools? Not yet, but it will. It will. It will have them, which is nice. Like, there's some things like the observer tools and the heat maps that's not in here just yet. So things like that would be nice to have right now, but they definitely don't have them, which is unfortunate. Yeah, it is very nice to have. So hopefully we can have those, fairly soon. I think I've made this caldera a tad bit too big, but that's okay. This realistically, I'd like to do this like on an 8K sized terrain, but this is just 2K by 2K, so it's a tad bit small for this application, but that's all right. Let's see what Crater Cliffs does for us. I'd like to make that a bit sharp up top. Yep, there we go. Canyon seems to do fine, but let's lower these to about 50%. And let's only set the canyon to also have a height distribution of the dang mountaintop. Whoops. Yeah, it's safe to say that World Creator 3 will have everything, all the features of World Creator 2, but a whole lot more optimization, a whole lot more features, a whole lot more artist tools. There we go. There we go. All right, I don't like how I really wish I can mask this area out and make it super smooth because I'd like to have the little caldera mound inside. But yeah, I can't mask anything yet. So we are stuck with where we're stuck. Say this is based off a convex cavity. And the convex size will be, we also need to add a height distribution. Then have the height be super faded. Let's actually lower this attack because it's a bit too high. There we go. We have a bit more of a peak, a cut edge here. Which is exactly what I want. So presumably another thing that's really nice is in, I believe I had it in here. If I wanted to create another cut, let's just create some cuts here. And try and go along with the parts that are already there. If I lower this just 3 meters, see how it's kind of already starting to take form based off what I've had. So if I were to go, let's reset that. If I were to go along this little valley here, and then do the same on the inside, go along this valley here, and lower this 2 meters. Then I can keep creating this nice little cut. We can create all these little cut valleys. So then it looks like the mountain just kind of really screwed up. I also wish World Creator would add an erosion painting system like Gaia. So they're going to be taking like the whole erosion stuff really seriously in a bit, as far as being able to paint your own types of erosion in there. It's just another one of those features that takes a while for them to code. So they're gonna have things like that in here. So don't worry. The whole goal is to make sure that World Creator is extremely user friendly, and so you don't have to worry about a whole lot when it comes in terms of design. Oh, a bit too much. See, I think this side's a bit too steep, unless we've got a mountain that's really bad. So I'm gonna paint this up just a tad. There we go. So let's now go to this guy and let's add, where is that? Let's try to see what some erosion can do for us. This is just what basic erosion flow will do. And then we have erosion fine, which is just some thin valley erosion cut lines. There's also, we don't have the main erosion in here yet. Oh, there's this strange erosion, which is experimental right now. You can do some really weird, some really weird things you can do with it. So sample size, increase its sample size. So there's a lot of little things that you can add to and not add to. Delete that. Let's now, let me see what I've got here. I always like sediment complex. Lower the length to about 5 or so to get those tight valleys. And then change how it's being distributed. I'm thinking I'm going to do this one with slope and do a lower slope value so that all the sediment's collected near the bottom. We'll do a low slope and then increase its threshold. Increase its length back. See that sediment collecting right here? If I were to increase its length. So actually, let's broaden this out more. And then let's add sediment this time. Bring this up, and then this one we'll do it based off cavity, concave cavity. Okay, it's not doing as much there as I want. So let's see the step size increased. See, it's trying to add some bulkiness there. Some subtle smoothed areas. All right. So now let's hide and unhide this. All right, so what I want to do now is smooth out some of those these bottom areas are a bit rough. So I'm going to add another balloon filter on top of everything, but I want the distribution to be set to height so that we can try and get everything from this line below. Okay, so everything from below, and let's lower this until we can see the threshold line. Okay, there it is. You can see it's moving. All right, about right there. So we'll balloon this up a tad, or we'll feather this up a tad. All right, so we feathered this stuff up a little bit too much around here, but let's also change the distribution to feather up just the convex areas. so that we still keep the shapes of everything that we have going on here, but it only affects just the tops, these top values here. So let's say the step size is really small, but our strength is really high. And that's going to help smooth out some. I like how it's still keeping these little rocky edges right here. If I were to hide this, you can see this is the before. Unhide it. You can see now it's flattening out these areas that are down below. The step size is pretty small. If I were to increase it, you can see it's taking more shape and more shape. And then here it just looks weird when you do that. But if you lower the strength value, it just brings back some of those original shapes. But let's say the shape is pretty small like this, and the strength is much higher. And then we can almost do something like this. Do that after the sedimentation. Lower its strength just a tad. There we go. I'm not going to be able to create that crisp beach edge like I would want because we don't have certain filters or masking capabilities that would allow us to do that. So that is unfortunate, but I should be able to, if I remember how I did this before. Let's see. I'm not going to be able to do this where I want because it's not going to validate exactly the area that I want to adhere to. Oh, that's unfortunate. All right, let's figure this out. Oh, so this one's a pretty good one. Distortion. We can add some distortion to everything, but if we do it based off of a small seed value or small length value, it'll only affect it ever so slightly. But a longer length will obviously deform the living daylights out of it. So if you wanted to add a little bit of a subtle curve to things, just use the distortion that's really light. And then you can also lower the scale of the distortion curves, so to speak, or you can increase that scale where it affects distortion on a much grander scale. So instead of distorting little details like this in a pattern, you're distorting the entire terrain as a whole, like a much larger distortion pattern. Turn roughness back on and see where that gets us. So we've obviously risen the terrain quite a bit to lose our water. But a bit much. It's a subtleties. One thing that we could do whenever we get to masking in areas, if I wanted to say have a certain biome, like if I once you're able to paint in biomes, this is going to be crucial with islands for sure. Or if you can select, hey, here's the water line, everything below the water line is a certain filter, everything based on the water level, like you're used to in World Creator 2. But say you were able to paint in a masked area of what's under the water. You can then come in here and lower the general strength of the biome as a whole of that detail, and that'll be the quickest way to smoothing out all that detail that's under the water without using like a smooth filter or some other filter to trick the effect. You can just flat out remove detail, and it's going to allow a whole lot easier transition for you to use. So let's go ahead and try and get our water level back. I'm just doing this gracefully. Somewhere right here. You can see it from this vantage point. Kind of can see where our caldera is coming to shape. And then one thing I really like is this smooth transition out here from have things flow out into the ocean without a harsh edge. But sometimes, this side didn't get all of that. This side didn't get all of that magma or lava, so it could be a much harsher edge, not quite so smooth. But this side can be a much more smooth transition. You guys have any don't forget to ask any further questions if you have questions about certain things. We're just going to keep messing around until we can start texturing here. We've been going for about an hour and 15 minutes. So here in a second, we'll start texturing some things to get a nice look. Actually, let's add some erosion flow. Then let's keep this erosion flow above the water line. Ten out of 10 would survive a plane crash and become friends with the volleyball on this island. Oh, that's funny. That Castaway. Castaway with Tom Hanks. That was a good movie. At first, you could also say that you survived a plane crash with many other people, and you're on a surprise TV show called Lost. Another show that that's a show that I really liked to watch when I was growing up. Was Lost. Oh, too much. Too much. Mistakes were made. Let's get this back up to about 90. Oh, I see. All right. So here's the edge. Let's lower it gracefully. All right. So that was fairly graceful. Then we'll do the lower bandwidth or the lower blend, hopefully at about 80. Actually, that's perfect right there. 83, 84. Ah. The conclusion of Lost, the dog dreamt it. At least that's what I read from. I don't remember there being the dog. This was a dog's dream in Lost. That is definitely not what happened. But nice try. Stefan is not here. He's busy working on this program. Ask about the Dune Filter. Yes, I'd love the Dune Filter whenever it comes into play. That would be amazing. Let's actually drop the top value here because I don't want this erosion flow to affect a whole lot of the peaks, if you know what I mean. Now, why are you going to go and do something like that to me? Raise you up just a bit more. Come on. All right, stop. Right there. All right, now let's increase this top smoothness just a tad. There we go. So we've got, we need more smoothness. More smoothness. All right, there we go. Eventually, whenever we get back to this, because I'll probably come back to this and recreate this whenever we're able to paint in masks, I'd have this filter applied to just this area and have all the lava be textured based on this erosion flow. All these different things we can do. Lost needed to flesh out Jack's tattoos more. That's true. Yeah, he's probably playing Cyberpunk. Yeah, the min max settings are a bit in here are a bit weird, but yeah, I saw that he was gonna flesh those out a bit nicer. Would be nice to fit the slider's current range to the view, similar to Carissa's gradient enter, so fine tuning is easier. Yeah, the sliders, these sliders are kind of hard to deal with, and they haven't touched these in a while, so I think they're going to get to it, but I don't really know when that's going to be. Hopefully, let's put this here. I don't like this area. Hopefully the sliders can get a little bit more attention because, yeah, you're right. They're a bit finicky, you know what I mean?